The story opens in Antarctica, where Invincible is carrying a man with a bomb strapped to his chest, complaining that the guy has completely ruined his day. Using all his strength, he hurls the man far away, putting enough distance between himself and the massive explosion. The blast is powerful enough to send Invincible crashing into the snow, but he quickly recovers, stands back up, and jokes that if this keeps happening, he's going to give himself a heart attack. 4 months earlier, Mark is at home in the bathroom, reading a comic book. His mother calls out to him, telling him to stop reading and hurry up or he'll be late for school. He finishes up and heads downstairs, confidently saying he still has 10 minutes to spare. Mark asks his mom if she knows where his dad is, but she has no idea. Nolan didn't come home the night before, but when they turn on the TV, they see him in Taiwan, battling a giant dragon-like monster. After class, Mark's friend William asks if he wants to hang out at a friend's house later that night, but Mark explains that he can't because he has a shift at Burger Mart after school. Later, Mark steps outside to take out the trash, but he accidentally uses too much strength and sends the garbage soaring through the air. Realizing what just happened, Mark is shocked and excited to discover that his powers have finally started to appear. It was about time. Later that evening, Mark's mother prepares dinner and suggests they start eating since Nolan won't be joining them. She's quickly proven wrong when Nolan suddenly flies in and casually takes a seat. Debbie asks if he handled the dragon in Taiwan, and Nolan replies that it was simple once he discovered who was truly behind it. Mark excitedly tells his parents that he's finally developed superpowers, but their reaction is surprisingly calm and unimpressed. After dinner, Mark quietly slips outside and takes his first real flight. He reassures himself that even if he falls, he should be fine since he's supposedly invulnerable. The next day, he decides to properly test his abilities and waits for the right opportunity. When 3 criminals are fleeing from the police, Mark jumps in, easily knocking them out. One of them even asks if Mark is trying to stop them or steal from them. Despite doing a good job, Mark's outfit makes him look more like a criminal than a hero. Still, his father, who has been watching the entire time, is impressed. Nolan tells Mark to follow him and the two fly off together toward a tailor shop. Inside, they meet an elderly man who designs suits for superheroes, and he hands Mark a suit to try on. Mark isn't impressed, saying he dislikes the yellow color and wants something that feels more unique to him. Unfortunately, Mark doesn't even have a superhero name yet. The tailor agrees to create a custom design, but explains that he'll need more ideas and input. The next day at school, Mark is distracted, trying to come up with a hero name and barely paying attention in class. When the lesson ends, the teacher asks Derek to stay behind for a moment. As Mark is putting his books into his locker, he notices a bully harassing another student. Mark steps in and tells him to stop. The bully is surprised by Mark's confidence and shoves him, but Mark refuses to back down and slams him into the lockers. This lands Mark in trouble, and he's sent to the principal's office. The principal admits the other student is a bully, but explains that Mark should have reported it to a teacher instead of using force. After all, the guy was twice his size. Mark isn't invincible yet. Soon after, a group of thieves attacks a local savings and loan bank, making off with a large amount of money. They rush outside and hurry across the street toward their parked car. Before they can get away, Mark is already waiting for them, fully suited up and holding their car suspended in the air. He tells the robbers not to bother firing at him, making it clear that he's invincible. Chapter 2 opens with Omni-Man explaining the truth to his young son about his origins and why he's different from everyone else. Nolan reveals that he was born billions of miles from Earth on a blue planet called Viltrum. His species, known as the Viltrumites, closely resemble humans, but they possess extraordinary abilities: flight, super speed, and immense strength. Their world had reached a perfect state of civilization. There was no disease, no crime, and no war. The ruling council took it upon themselves to guide less developed planets and help them evolve to higher levels of progress. They formed the World Betterment Committee, an organization responsible for overseeing other worlds and speeding up their development. Omni-Man worked for this committee, traveling across planets to find the perfect world to add to the program. Earth was initially dismissed as too primitive, but Nolan was drawn to the planet and its diversity, so he chose to remain there. His mission was to protect Earth until it became advanced enough to join the Viltrumite program, but his plans changed when he met Debbie Debbie and fell in love with her. Nolan tells his son that one day he will develop powers just like his own and asks if he understands. Mark, however, is only concerned with one simple question: whether he'll be able to fly someday. Later, Mark is shown lying in bed, unable to sleep, thinking about his new abilities. Realizing that he can now fly, he decides to test his powers further. He launches himself out of his window and soars high into the sky, enjoying every second as he looks down at the world below. Down on the streets, one of the Mauler twins has just robbed a toy store and is carrying a large game box on his shoulders. Mark tries to stop him, but he's caught by surprise and slammed into the wall. He starts to fight back, but a massive explosion cuts him off. The teen team arrives, and Rex-Splode warns everyone to stand down, saying the next blast will be even bigger. Mauler instantly attacks them and smashes their flying bike, but Mark manages to surprise him and knocks him out with a powerful punch. Robot praises Mark for the hit, while Adam Eve comments that he looks familiar. Robot then introduces the team, saying it was nice meeting him, but they have to leave after collecting the Mauler twin. In Chapter 3. The next day, the high school principal gives a serious speech announcing that 3 students are missing and warning everyone to stay alert. He tells students not to go anywhere alone and to report anything suspicious. Mark tells Eve that the missing students probably deserved it because they were bullies. But Eve says they were always kind to her. Mark calls her naive, saying they were only nice to her because she's extremely attractive. She thanks him for the compliment, but tells Mark she's dating Rex-Splode. Mark quickly explains he didn't mean anything by it and suggests they just drop the topic. Eve invites Mark to hang out at the teen team's lair, but he can't because he's scheduled to work at Burger Mart that night. Later, he regrets skipping it, especially when his manager yells at him for cooking burgers too slowly. He snaps back at his boss and quits, but immediately panics, saying his dad is going to kill him. After dinner, Mark and his father clean the dishes, and Nolan casually suggests that Mark should just leave the job. Money isn't really a problem for them anyway. Mark agrees, feeling like everything worked out in his favor. The next day, Nolan asks Mark to patrol the city with him. He praises Mark, saying his abilities are improving every day and encourages him to keep pushing himself. They stop briefly for lunch, but Nolan rushes off to handle an emergency and soon calls Mark to join him. Chapter 3, Part 2. A massive portal opens and an alien species pours into the city. They fight them off one by one, but even though the aliens aren't very strong, their numbers make them overwhelming. Strangely, the aliens begin aging rapidly, growing older by the second. Working together, father and son manage to force them back through the portal into their own dimension. Mark asks if invasions like this happen often, and Nolan replies that it's rarely ever this bad. He admits that if it had lasted any longer, he would have needed help from the Guardians of the Globe or Megaforce. Omni-Man suddenly senses trouble at Lakeside Mall and races there, with Mark struggling to keep up. They find another teen with a bomb strapped to him, but Omni-Man throws him outside just seconds before it detonates. Mark recognizes the boy as one of the missing students from his school. Out of nowhere, a portal opens and Omni-Man is abducted before he can react. Mark rushes home and tells his mom what happened, but she tries to stay calm, joking that it just means more pork chops for the 2 of them. Chapter 4 begin with Invincible heads to the teen team lair, wanting to warn Eve about the student who was just killed. He tells Robot that someone is abducting students and turning them into human bombs. He also fills in Eve and Rex, but Robot tells them all to go home, get some sleep, and stay alert at school for anything suspicious. Mark returns home and finds his mother still awake. This time, she's clearly worried about Nolan, remembering when he once disappeared for 7 months, trapped in another dimension. The next day, Mark and Eve discuss the case, and Mark wishes it were just some giant monster he could punch, since that's the only kind of problem he feels good at handling. During physics class, they start talking again, and the teacher jokingly calls them boyfriend and girlfriend, making the whole class laugh. Mark feels the professor acted like a jerk and made things uncomfortable between him and Eve. Robot contacts Eve, saying he's uncovered something important, but the team is busy at the moment. He explains that their physics teacher previously worked for a military research company and is actually responsible for the attacks. Mark and Eve suit up and fly to the professor's house to confront him before the authorities arrive. Professor Miles immediately admits everything. He explains that he targeted the school bullies out of revenge after his life fell apart. His son had suffered severe bullying at school, which destroyed his family, led to his divorce, and cost him his job. Consumed by grief and anger, he wanted to make those responsible suffer and planned to end everything in one one final explosion, taking 2 superheroes with him. The bomb strapped to his chest is set to detonate in 1 minute, giving Invincible just enough time to grab him and fly away. Mark takes him all the way to Antarctica, trying to keep the blast far from anyone else. Afterward, Mark goes home and asks his mom if his dad has returned, but he hasn't. As Mark heads upstairs, Omni-Man suddenly comes home and tells Debbie he needs to shave. She's overwhelmed with relief. At dinner, Debbie asks if anything interesting happened that day, and Nolan casually says he spent the last 8 months enslaved by an army from another dimension. Time moved much slower there, but he managed to start a rebellion and eventually escape back home.